The date is June 20th, 2025. The world watches with great concern as the Middle East stands on the edge of a much larger conflict. Tensions between the United States and Iran, which have been high for many years, are now at a critical point. This is not just a political disagreement. It is a situation that involves powerful armies, dangerous weapons, and the risk of a war that could affect everyone. For decades, the relationship between Washington and Tehran has been filled with mistrust and near misses. Now, a direct and open war between Israel and Iran has pulled the United States deeper into the crisis, forcing it to make difficult choices. Understanding this situation is important for people everywhere. A major war in this region would not stay in the Middle East. It would have a big impact on the global economy, especially the price of oil. It would threaten important shipping routes that carry goods around the world. The lives of millions of people, both soldiers and civilians, would be in danger. The decisions made in the next few days and weeks by leaders in Washington, Tehran, and Jerusalem could change the world as we know it. This essay will explain what is happening right now and what could realistically happen next. We will look at the military forces involved in this growing conflict. We will examine the advanced weapons and the strategies that each side is using. The conflict is already a reality for Israel and Iran, but the United States is playing a very careful role. It is trying to support its ally Israel without getting into a direct shooting war with Iran. This is a very difficult balance to maintain. The US has moved powerful military assets into the region, sending a clear message to Iran. But what does this message truly mean, and how will Iran respond to it? This is a story with many different parts. It involves not only the main countries but also their partners and allies across the region. Groups in Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon are watching closely, and they could easily be drawn into the fighting. The history between the United States and Iran is long and complicated, full of events that have built a deep sense of anger and suspicion on both sides. To understand the present, we must also look at the past. This complex situation requires a clear and realistic look at the facts on the ground. The current crisis did not begin overnight. It is the result of a long and secret shadow war that has finally come out into the open. The major turning point happened on June 12, 2025. On that day, Israel launched a massive air campaign against Iran. This was not a small, limited strike. It was a large-scale operation designed to seriously damage Iran's military and nuclear capabilities. Israeli fighter jets flew deep into Iranian airspace, hitting targets that were very important to the Iranian government. The world was shocked by the size and intensity of the attack, which marked a new and dangerous phase in the long-running conflict. Israel's military has focused on several key areas inside Iran. A top priority has been Iran's nuclear program. The Natanz nuclear facility, a key part of Iran's ambitions, suffered significant damage. International inspectors have confirmed that underground sections of the facility were hit, likely destroying thousands of centrifuges used for enriching uranium. Israeli warplanes have also targeted major military bases near cities like Tehran and Esfahan. They have specifically gone after missile launch sites and the bases of the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, which is a key part of Iran's military and political structure. The Israeli attacks have been very effective in some ways. Reports suggest that Israel has established air superiority over the western parts of Iran. This means their pilots can fly more freely without being stopped by Iranian defenses. To achieve this, Israel has destroyed more than 70 Iranian air defense systems, making it harder for Iran to protect its own skies. The attacks have also hit important infrastructure, like oil refineries. This has made Iran's existing energy problems even worse. The clear goal of Israel's campaign is to weaken Iran's ability to fight back and to stop its nuclear program for good. In response to these devastating attacks, Iran has retaliated. It has launched its own missiles and drones toward Israel. However, the number and strength of these counterattacks have been decreasing. This suggests that the Israeli strikes on Iran's missile stockpiles and launchers are having an effect. The Israeli military claims to have destroyed a large percentage of Iran's offensive missile capability. While one Iranian missile did hit near a military school in Tel Aviv, it caused no casualties. The initial exchange of fire has been intense, but Israel's military power appears to be giving it a significant advantage in this direct confrontation. As the conflict between Israel and Iran exploded, the United States immediately took action. Under the leadership of President Trump, the U.S. military began moving significant forces into the Middle East. This was not a secret operation. It was a very public display of American military power. The Pentagon announced the deployment of advanced fighter jets, including the F-16, the F-22, and the F-35. These are some of the most capable aircraft in the world. At the same time, at least 17 large air refueling tankers were sent to the region, which are needed to support long-range air operations. The most powerful symbol of this deployment is the USS Nimitz, an enormous aircraft carrier. An aircraft carrier is like a floating city and military base. It carries dozens of fighter jets and is protected by a group of other warships, called a carrier strike group. The arrival of the USS Nimitz in the waters near Iran sends a very strong message. The White House has officially described these military movements as defensive. They say the goal is not to start a war, but to protect American forces and allies in the region. It is meant to be a show of force, to discourage Iran from taking any action against the United States. However, the view from Tehran is very different. The Iranian government does not see these actions as defensive. They see the arrival of more American troops and weapons as a threat. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has stated that the U.S. is not directly involved in the fighting between Israel and Iran. Yet American forces have already intercepted some Iranian rockets. The U.S. has also started to evacuate some of its embassy staff from neighboring Iraq. To Iran, these actions look like the United States is helping Israel and preparing for a bigger fight. They see it as a sign of American complicity in the attacks against them. This creates a very dangerous and unstable situation. President Trump has used strong language demanding Iran's unconditional surrender. He even suggested that the people of Tehran should evacuate their city. This kind of talk makes diplomacy very difficult. The United States has also told its allies in the region, like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, that it will not join the war unless American citizens or military bases are directly targeted by Iran. But with US and Iranian forces operating so close to each other, the risk of a mistake or a misunderstanding that could lead to direct conflict is extremely high. While the government in Washington, D.C. makes decisions about military deployments, the American public has its own strong opinions. The idea of getting involved in another major war in the Middle East is not popular. Recent history has made many Americans tired of long and costly conflicts far from home. Wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have lasted for decades, cost trillions of dollars, and resulted in the loss of many American lives. This experience has created a deep sense of caution among the public when it comes to new military adventures. People are asking whether a war with Iran is necessary and what the ultimate cost would be. Recent polling data shows this feeling very clearly. A poll conducted by The Economist and YouGov between June 13th and June 16th, 2025, reveals that a large majority of Americans are against military intervention. 60% of all Americans surveyed said they oppose the U.S. getting directly involved in the war between Israel and Iran. This opposition is not just from one political party. The same poll found that even a majority of President Trump's own voters from the 2024 election, 53% of them, are also against intervention. This shows a wide agreement across the political spectrum that the U.S. should stay out of the fighting. Instead of war, the American public seems to prefer a different path. The same poll showed that most people want to see the government use diplomacy. 56% of all Americans, and an even higher 63% of Trump's voters, said they support direct diplomatic negotiations with Iran to end the conflict. This suggests that people believe there are other ways to solve this crisis without sending soldiers into battle. The public seems to want leaders to talk, not fight. This puts pressure on the White House and Congress to consider options other than military force. This strong public opinion creates a difficult political situation for President Trump and other leaders. While some politicians, like former National Security Advisor John Bolton, are calling for the U.S. to help overthrow the Iranian government, this is not a popular view with the general public. The president must balance the desire to show strength and support an ally like Israel with the clear wishes of the American people, who are tired of war. If the conflict gets worse and American forces are drawn in, the government could face significant opposition from its own citizens. This makes every decision very risky. Iran is a large and powerful country, but its military just can't match the advanced technology of the United States or Israel. Because of this, Iran has developed a different kind of military strategy. it doesn't rely only on its own army, navy, and air force. Instead, it uses a combination of direct retaliation and a network of allied militant groups, often called proxies, across the Middle East. This approach allows Iran to fight back in many different places at once, making it a really difficult opponent to defeat completely. The whole idea behind this strategy is to raise the cost of any attack on Iran and to create chaos throughout the region. When Israel attacked, Iran's first response was to launch its own ballistic missiles and armed drones. This was a direct state-to-state retaliation. However, as we've seen, this has been only partially successful because of Israel's strong air defenses and its strikes on Iran's launch sites. But that's really just one part of Iran's plan. The Iranian government has publicly warned that if the United States joins the war and strikes Iranian territory, Iran is prepared to attack U.S. military bases. There are thousands of American troops stationed in countries like Iraq, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, and all of them could become targets. This is where Iran's proxies become very important. For years, Iran has provided money, weapons, and training to groups that share its political and religious goals. In Yemen, the Houthi movement has already pledged its support for Iran. The Houthis have previously attacked international shipping in the Red Sea, a vital waterway for global trade. They have threatened to start these attacks again, which would cause major problems for the world economy. Iran could also use its own navy to try to lay mines in the Strait of Hormuz, another critical choke point for oil tankers, to disrupt the global energy supply. Now, the most dangerous proxies for American forces are the powerful Shia militias in Iraq. Groups like Kataib Hezbollah are closely aligned with Iran and have a long history of fighting against U.S. troops. These militias have already created a joint plan to attack American positions inside Iraq if the U.S. enters the war. Between October 2023 and November 2024, these groups carried out nearly 200 attacks on U.S. bases. On June 15, 2025, American air defenses near the city of Erbil in northern Iraq shot down a drone that was suspected to be from Iran. This really shows that the proxy war is already happening and could easily escalate. Iraq is caught in a terrible position, stuck between its two most powerful partners, the United States and Iran. For years, the country has tried to balance its relationships with both Washington and Tehran, but the open war next door is making that impossible. The Iraqi government is officially neutral. It has protested against both Israel and Iran for using its airspace to conduct attacks. However, the government in Baghdad is weak, and it has very little power to stop either side from flying over its territory. This turns Iraq into an unwilling battlefield, a place where other countries' wars are fought. The presence of about 2,500 American troops in Iraq makes the situation even more dangerous. These soldiers are there as part of an agreement with the Iraqi government to help fight the remnants of ISIS and to train Iraqi forces. But to Iran and its allied militias, these American troops are a convenient target. The powerful Iranian-backed militias, legally part of the Iraqi state's security forces but often acting independently, see the U.S. presence as a hostile occupation. They have made it very clear that if the U.S. attacks Iran, they will attack U.S. forces in Iraq. This puts American soldiers in immediate danger. The conflict also threatens to destroy Iraq's fragile stability. The country is still recovering from decades of war, sanctions, and civil strife. Its economy and basic services are in a very poor state. For example, Iraq relies heavily on natural gas imported from Iran to generate electricity for its citizens. The Israeli airstrikes on Iranian infrastructure have put this supply at risk. If the gas is cut off, large parts of Iraq could be left without power. This would lead to public anger, protests, and could further weaken the government, possibly leading to more violence and chaos inside the country. The Iraqi government is trying to find a way out of this crisis. In September 2024, it signed an agreement with the United States for a full withdrawal of all foreign combat troops by the end of 2026. But that date is still far away. Right now, the government in Baghdad is trying to use diplomacy to calm the situation. It is talking to both American and Iranian officials, urging them to avoid a wider war. However, the Iraqi leaders know that the final decisions will be made in Washington and Tehran. They can only hope that their country does not become the main battleground for a conflict they did not start and do not want. A major war involving Iran would not be contained within the Middle East. Its effects would be felt all over the world, primarily through the global economy. The region is home to some of the world's most important strategic waterways, often called choke points. These are narrow sea lanes through which a huge percentage of global trade and, most importantly, oil must pass. If these choke points are closed or become too dangerous for ships, the impact on everyday life for people far away could be enormous. The most critical of these is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage of water between Iran and Oman. About 1/5 of all the oil consumed in the world travels through the Strait of Hormuz on massive tanker ships. Iran's long coastline runs along the entire northern side of the strait, giving it a powerful strategic position. If a full-scale war breaks out, Iran could try to close the strait. It could use its navy to lay sea mines, which are like bombs that float in the water and explode when a ship hits them. It could also use anti-ship missiles and fast attack boats to target tankers. Even the threat of such attacks would be enough to cause huge problems. Insurance costs for shipping companies would skyrocket, and many might refuse to send their ships through the area at all. Another vital choke point is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which connects the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea. This is the main route for ships traveling between Europe and Asia through the Suez Canal. The Houthi movement in Yemen, which is an ally of Iran, controls a long stretch of the coastline next to this strait. The Houthis have already shown their ability and willingness to attack ships in the Red Sea with drones and missiles. A new campaign of attacks by the Houthis would force ships to take a much longer and more expensive route around the entire continent of Africa, causing massive delays and increasing the cost of goods worldwide. The economic consequences of disrupting these routes would be severe. The price of oil would likely increase dramatically. This would mean higher gasoline prices for drivers in America, Europe, and Asia. Higher fuel costs would also make it more expensive to transport all other goods, leading to inflation and a higher cost of living for everyone. The global supply chain, which is still recovering from the problems caused by the pandemic, would face another major shock. A war with Iran is not just a military problem. It is a direct threat to the stability of the global economy and the financial well-being of millions. To understand the crisis of June 2025, we must look back at the long and troubled history between the United States and Iran. The deep mistrust that exists today is not new. It has been built up over more than 70 years of painful events. One of the earliest and most important events happened in 1953. At that time, Iran had a democratically elected prime minister named Mohammad Mossadegh. He nationalized Iran's oil industry, taking control of it from foreign companies. The United States and Great Britain, wanting to protect their oil interests, organized a secret operation, a coup, that overthrew him and put the Shah, a monarch friendly to the West, back in absolute power. Many Iranians have never forgotten this. They saw it as America interfering in their country to steal their resources. The Shah ruled for the next 26 years, often with a brutal secret police force. This anger eventually led to the Iranian Revolution in 1979. The Shah was overthrown, and an Islamic republic, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, was established. This new government was strongly anti-American. Late that year, angry students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. This event shocked the United States and created a deep anger toward Iran that still exists today. Since then, the relationship has been one of constant conflict, sometimes hidden and sometimes open. The U.S. supported Iraq's leader, Saddam Hussein, in his long and brutal war against Iran in the 1980s. In recent years, the conflict has focused on Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. and other world powers believe Iran is trying to build a nuclear bomb, while Iran insists its program is for peaceful energy. This disagreement has led to crippling economic sanctions against Iran and a long-running shadow war, which included cyber attacks and the assassination of Iranian nuclear scientists, like Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in 2020. This history is important because it shows why simple solutions like trying to overthrow the Iranian government are so dangerous. Some in the US, like John Bolton, have called for regime change, but history shows this often fails or makes things much worse. US-led interventions in Iraq and Libya led to years of instability and violence. Iran is a huge country with 88 million people and a strong sense of national pride. An attempt to change its government from the outside would likely unite the Iranian people against the attacker and lead to a much longer and bloodier war than anyone expects. As the conflict rages between Israel and Iran, with the United States watching from the sidelines, the world is asking a critical question: what happens next? There are several possible paths forward, ranging from a fragile peace to a catastrophic regional war. The best-case scenario, and the one that a majority of the American public supports, is a return to diplomacy. This would involve all sides agreeing to a ceasefire, a pause in the fighting, to allow for negotiations to begin. Rumors of potential talks have surfaced, but right now, the major players seem unwilling to back down from the fight. For a ceasefire to happen, both Israel and Iran would need to feel they can achieve their goals without more fighting. Israel has stated it will not stop its attacks until it is satisfied that its military objectives have been met. This means it wants to do more damage to Iran's military and nuclear infrastructure. Iran, on the other hand, has publicly denied that it is seeking an end to the conflict, wanting to appear strong in the face of the attacks. For diplomacy to work, a third party, perhaps a group of neutral countries, would need to step in and help find a solution that allows both sides to claim some kind of victory and stop the violence. The most dangerous path is further escalation. This could happen in several ways. If an Iranian missile strike were to kill a significant number of Israeli civilians, Israel might respond with even more devastating attacks, possibly targeting government buildings in Tehran. A more direct path to a wider war involves the United States. If Iran or one of its proxy groups were to attack a U.S. military base and kill American soldiers, the pressure on President Trump to retaliate directly against Iran would be immense. Such a move would almost certainly lead to a full-scale war between the U.S. and Iran. In the end, the most realistic short-term future is likely a continuation of the current situation, a tense and violent state that is more than a shadow war but less than an all-out regional conflict. Israel will likely continue its air campaign, and Iran will continue to retaliate where it can, using both its own military and its proxies. The United States will continue its defensive deployment, trying to deter Iran while avoiding a direct fight. This is a highly unstable balance. The risk of a miscalculation is incredibly high. The crisis is a powerful reminder of how quickly old tensions can erupt into new wars, threatening peace and stability, not just in the Middle East, but across the entire world.